Ragin Cajuns podcast. I'm Kevon Wilson alongside a very special guest. Some of you guys know him as AD. Some of you guys know him as Doctor. It's Bryan Maggard is in the building today. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Enjoying this cool November weather in southern Louisiana.
You said you caught a cold, huh?
I'm fighting a little bit of a crud, something here. I know
that brutal Louisiana winter?
The temperature change. It hit me hard. I think between that, lack of sleep, stress.
Right. And you're not traveling
It's taking
at
my
all
toll. It's taking its toll on. That's right. It's all good, though.
We want to find out about you. You're kind of you are the head of the athletic department, and sometimes people don't get to see you a lot. But I want to take it all the way back.
Okay.
Dexter, Kansas. What is a Dexter, Kansas?
Well, Dexter, Kansas, sadly, I think it's a dying community today, but at least in its heyday when I was there, it a population of about 500 people. There were 14 in my high school graduating class.
There was what?
14. You're looking at 1/14 of my graduating class. It was a school, K through 12. Everybody knew everybody, right?
Yeah.
We had an elementary school building and the junior high school building, but wouldn't trade it for anything. I'd like to tout that I'm a 3-sport letterman, but everybody had to play so we could fill teams.
All right.
Enjoyed football, basketball, and baseball.
So what was that like? It's kind of a pure community, so everybody knows everybody. Everybody's at every event.
That's
and
right.
As an athlete, what sports did you play, and did you fill up the stands?
Right. Well, athlete's a very loose term with me. As I tell people, on my very best day, I was average. But and again, it took us all to go out just so we could field a team. But my passion in high school, from a sports standpoint, would have been football. But also played basketball and baseball. Played 8-man football in Dexter, so you never really came off the field. You played both ways in special teams, and very high-scoring games up and down the field quickly.
A little arena football on a
somewhat
large
like
field.
that.
Yeah.
That's right.
What positions we talking about?
Gosh, anywhere from running back to usually I was a second-string quarterback, and a little bit of receiver on the offensive side, and usually played outside linebacker on the defense.
Did you emulate anybody? Who did you want to be when you lined up in that backfield?
I just wanted to be someone who didn't embarrass themselves, and I don't think I had anyone I emulated per se, but from whether it's a professional sports team standpoint, grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Not to divert, but no, I was just I enjoy sport. Enjoyed playing. Again, on my very best day, I was average, but I had fun, and we had fun, and we typically won more than we lost, and that's always positive. There were community events, right? There's what people did on Friday nights, and your hometowns traveled well. To your away games as well.
You are the pro team.
You were the pro team. You were the only show in town.
Yeah. And so sports and community was kind of always in the background for you.
It was. It really was. And, Dexter held its annual barbecue every July.
Oh, that sounds
the second
delicious.
Saturday in July. It was very good. And trust me, it was always pork sandwiches, and it was fresh pork. Trust me. They had a live band, so there was all throughout the day there were different games and events, for kids and families. So it was a full day of fun stuff, and everybody marked their calendars for the second Saturday in July.
Have you been back?
Unfortunately, not in a long time. My mother passed in 2007, and that's where she lived, and she passed. I still have older brother and older sister who live there. And sadly, I haven't been back in a long time, and I really need to carve out some time to get back to see them. I keep inviting them to southern Louisiana. But, I do need to get back. I'd like to, and then just, whether it's for, 4 or so days. 4 days is probably plenty in Dexter, Kansas. Right. But, both my brother and sister own a lot of acreage down there. They ranch, raising cattle, and so, there's stuff to do. I mean, you go fishing on watersheds and ponds, but just to catch up with them, we stay connected via technology today, but to your point, I need to get back.
You go from a 500-person city, and then somehow you end up on this humongous campus called Kansas State.
That's right.
What was that like?
Well, it was a bit of a transition. I mean, I remember walking into my first general psychology lecture class, and there was almost as many people is in my community.
In that class.
In that class. Not quite as many, but certainly in one setting, and by no means was I intimidated or anything like that. It's not like Manhattan, Kansas is a metropolis, right? But it was a much larger campus. I joined a fraternity. I was a Lambda Chi at Kansas State, and so right away, I was in
great
some
brothers.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you had a community there to be a part of, and wouldn't trade those days for anything. Really enjoyed it. But K-State was a fantastic college experience, both academically and socially. Aggieville, is the college hangout for the students, but credit to K-State's where I got my start in athletics, believe it or not, as a student equipment manager.
What sport?
Football.
Really?
Back when Kansas State could not buy a win, literally. We would try. Austin Peay.
So you're diehard.
Oh,
so you were there where it was really bad.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
When the only game you either won or tied was the University of Kansas, and that was back in the Big 8 football days, not Big 10, not Big 12.
Big 12, right?
Big 8.
Yikes. Oh, so you were there where it was really bad. You get a good heartfelt feeling for the university. Journalism, though.
That's right.
Is what you go for. Why journalism?
Graduating from high school really had little to no idea what I wanted to do next. Just kind of knew college was the next step. Actually contemplated going to a local community college to play baseball, but actually, I credit my brother for saying, no, you're not doing that. That was only 25 miles away. You're going to go to Manhattan. And so did that, and was kind of told I always had, a decent personality and likable by people. And so I remember a guidance counselor saying, you could consider public relations. And I said, what is that? I didn't know even what that was. So anyway, I get to Manhattan, check the box, journalism, mass communications is my degree program of choice. Chose advertising as an emphasis area. And
not a ton of advertising hubs in Dexter.
Not really. And but I knew I wasn't going to go back. But I was probably like many college students then and even today. You kind of just, you walk through the forest, not necessarily knowing, where you're going. And it was about my senior year is when I realized I don't see myself, doing anything in that academic field, right, from a professional standpoint, but had worked as a student manager and really got turned on to sport, thinking that I'd like to work in professional sports in the front office. And so that's kind of what drove my career path, even though I never ended up in professional sports.
So after you get your bachelor's, do you continue school immediately to go get that master's?
I took about a semester off, but my boss at the time at Kansas State, he was the head equipment manager there. He got me lined up when I graduated to go work the preseason training camp with the Washington Redskins. So in August-ish, whenever camp started, I loaded up and went to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Dickinson College is where the Redskins used to hold their camp. And I went there assigned to working with their equipment staff, knowing I did not want to work in equipment operations, but I wanted to use that opportunity to talk to their front office people. And so the number one piece of advice that everybody, at least with the Redskins organization, told me was go back and get your master's. Go back and get that advanced degree. And so that was my takeaway from that experience. So by the time camp was over, it was too late to start graduate school that fall after I graduated.
Because after getting that advice, you were ready to start class.
Oh, yeah. I thought I knew what I was going to do. I thought, hey, the next step to getting into, because I wanted to work with an NFL team. That was my goal. And so actually moved in with my sister, who didn't live too far from Manhattan. She lived in a little small town near Topeka, Kansas, which is the state capital. I found a job in Topeka, so I had a little commute, working retail in a sporting goods kiosk, if you will, in what you're probably too young for this, Kevin, but in a department store called Montgomery Ward.
I remember Montgomery Ward.
I don't think they
strong jackets in Montgomery Ward.
And so Montgomery Ward in the men's section kind of had this little sporting good kiosk. And I applied for it, and the interview consisted of if I was able to identify certain mascots and the teams, the guy was good enough.
Nailed it.
I could do that. So I always tell people between that, living with my sister, who I love dearly, and working retail for, a handful of months was all the motivation I needed to get back into the classroom. So the following January, the spring semester, I started a master's program at K-State.
Made it through. And when did you start finding your footing?
So again, not a lot different than a lot of things in my life. I kind of fell into the college scene, college athletic scene. So I, during about my third semester of graduate work, third out of four semesters, I used my contacts from my equipment manager days to do a 3-hour practicum course with an area called Compliance and Student Services within the K-State Athletic Department, having really no idea what that was, right? But I could get 3 credit hours, get some type of experience, And so fast forward just, weeks after I started that experience, an individual left a position within the department, the athletic department, called academic coordinator for the football program. And so literally, me, the intern, I was kind of charged with filling the gap between when that person left and when they could get somebody hired full-time. So I'm thrown into this office where I'm trying to hold court as the academic coordinator for the K-State football team, and I had zero clue what that was about, zero. But fortunately, there was another lady there who kind of oversaw that for all the other sports, and she was a great guide and mentor for me at that time. And I always tell people, between me doing a good enough job in that interim role or fill the gap role and them knowing they could get me very cheap, they offered me the full-time job.
But that would mean you'd have to drop your Montgomery Ward career.
Well, yeah, my retail career was going to the wayside. But no, I'm in school at this time, and so I was hired for $18,000 a year. And really, I credit a guy named Bill Snyder, the head football coach there today, who
he's had an okay career.
Yeah, he's done all right. He was the one who I think I made a good enough impression with that he really went to bat for me to get that job. And so for $18,000 a year contingent that I would continue my master's work and finish my degree, I was hired as the academic coordinator for the Kansas State football team.
Easy to say.
Job
yes,
one.
I'll figure it out.
Job one. I'll figure it out.
Awesome. Where does Florida State?
So 3 years. I was in that job at K-State for 3 years. Was actually offered a job at Nebraska, a similar job at Nebraska. Declined that, and the individual who offered me that job took a job at Florida State University as the director of academic services for the athletic department. So he called me up when he got that job and said, "Hey, you made a good impression with us, at Nebraska. Would really love to bring you to Florida State with me. And, by the way, I would have a position for your wife as well." Because at the time, Carrie was the assistant coach's secretary at K-State. And so we loaded up, a U-Haul van, pulled one car behind us, and had 2 basset hounds that we loaded up. And we moved from Manhattan, Kansas, where Carrie is born and raised, and where I'd lived for 8 years, so it was home for us. And we ventured down to Tallahassee, Florida. Really a similar job than what I was doing at K-State. And we did that for 2 years. And really, to be honest with you, a combination of us probably being a little bit immature and the first big move from home, we were getting homesick. So we had our first child, Dalton, a son, in May of 1995. And an opportunity at Missouri opened up. And so I got a call, if I'd be interested in applying for that.
Back in the Midwest?
Yeah, 4 to 5 hours from grandparents. And so we were excited for that opportunity, was lucky enough to get that job, and moved there in 1995 for, again, really a lateral move, job-wise, right? It just got us to where we want to be.
But comfort, you were homesick.
That's right.
And Carrie was homesick as well.
Yeah, we were. I mean, just... it was a good experience, and looking back, I wouldn't trade those 2 years for anything because I think we grew up a lot. We really did.
No down on the city of Tallahassee at all.
Not well. It wasn't. No, not really. It was just.
You're thinking, what were you going to say?
I mean, again, it was just new. It was different, right? And so.
What do you mean different?
Well. Again, it's just there was some cultural differences. There was, we kind of went from being medium to big size fish in a smaller pond at Kansas State to going to be a small fish in a big pond at Florida State, within the athletic department.
Right.
And so the inclusion wasn't the same. At K-State, it was taken very well care of. Would get to travel on bowl trips or away games or whatever the case might be. And at Florida State,
the staff is so huge.
Yeah,
there.
it's just they kind of had a line of demarcation, and I wouldn't. But again, that's not why. But some of the differences,
Stuff adds up.
It does. It really does.
How'd you meet Carrie?
It's a funny story. She's from Manhattan. I had been dating a girl in her sorority for about 2 years. Sophomore and junior year, I think it was.
She was peeping you from the side.
No, but our paths had crossed because, again, same sorority as a ex-girlfriend, and she was friends with some guys in my fraternity, so paths would cross that way. And so we knew each other. At least we were acquaintances. And my last semester of my senior year at K-State, we had a class together. She was a year behind me. And so, again, a familiar face, pretty face, but, again, just a girl, a new friend, nice girl. And so we just kind of sat with each other in class, and we kind of had this arrangement. Okay, let's alternate coming to class,
I'll take care of you, take care of me. Right.
We exchange notes. You don't have to be here all the time.
That's awesome.
And then I would say, it really, the relationship really started when she invited me to get together to study for the final together.
Oh, wait a minute.
Here we go.
Wait a minute.
So it's a relationship based on academics.
Yeah.
But, that occurred, and then, I graduate. Again, friends. Didn't really, talk much in between the end of that semester and when I graduated. I stayed in Manhattan before I left for Washington. And we'd run into each other. And so I just remember calling her up one time and asking her if she wanted to go grab lunch, on one Saturday afternoon. And she accepted. And 28, 29 years later, 3 kids. Here we are.
Where'd you take her?
A little place called Rockabilly Deli in Aggieville. And I actually tricked her. I had told her that she had promised to take me to lunch. She couldn't quite recall that, but she obliged anyway. And then when we got there, I paid for it. But that was my... I had to trick her to get her to go out with me.
That was a great plan.
It's all right.
It's still a strong plan.
It worked.
You guys end up moving in together? What did you mention you and her when some Basset Hounds moved to Tallahassee? What?
Well, we were married by then. So.
Right.
So, yeah, we did move in together after we were married. And we lived in Manhattan for a while. Like I said, I was employed by the athletic department, so was she.
So this is after you got the position?
Yes, correct. Okay. Right. So when I got back from, we didn't really start dating per se until after I got back from the Washington Redskin gig, right? Back then, we stayed in touch via, landline phone calls and, some handwritten letters. But when I got back, she was the one who picked me up from the airport, and really from that point on, it was exclusive.
Awesome.
How's that?
Exclusive. Awesome. All right, so we get out of town in Florida State. We get out of Tallahassee, get back to the Midwest.
Right.
And then you embark on this 21-year journey.
Yeah, 22 actually. 22
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why was Missouri so pertinent in your life?
I think because of the opportunities that I were given, or I was given there. It's random or very seldom in this industry that you get to spend that much time in one location, right? Particularly if you want to kind of move up the ladder, right? But was very fortunate to be given that opportunity. And I credit a guy named Mike Alden, who Joe Castiglione, who's now the AD at Oklahoma, was the AD at Missouri when I was hired. I think Joe was only there for 2 or 3 years, and then he got the Oklahoma job and left. And they hired a guy named Mike Alden. And just throughout, the rest of my career there, Mike's career, we bonded. We had a personal relationship outside of the workforce, but really credit Mike for giving me the opportunities to continue to grow. So I started as the academic coordinator for the Missouri football team, and then promoted to the director of all the academic programs, right? And then promoted to an associate AD title where all the student service areas, reported to me: strength and conditioning, sports medicine, academics, life skills programming, That continued to grow. Then was given opportunities to get involved with facility management, project management, event management, and then was given opportunities to have stints overseeing the external areas, within a department. So really, without probably even being known to me, I was being groomed. To sit in this chair, right? And I was one of those, Kevin. I didn't have to be an athletic director. I enjoyed, what I was doing when I was doing it, no matter what the responsibilities were. But looking back, I was certainly acquiring experience in most, not all, but most of the facets of an athletics department that really prepared me to sit in this chair.
And this all started from owning a position that you were not prepared for at Kansas State.
Absolutely. Well, fell into it. I do tell people, when people say, how'd you get your start? And I literally fell into it.
How'd you get the call from the University of Louisiana?
Mm-hmm. So, I was made aware, that the vacancy was there. Did some of my research, on UL, the community of Lafayette.
What made you start looking into it?
Well, it was, again, I was just made aware of the opening, right? And had some people talk to me about it, just in terms of, hey, this is a great opportunity.
I mean, so people kind of looking at you like,
yeah,
you're ready.
Well, yeah, you're ready. And this was and people who were talking to me knew that, again, I didn't have to be an AD, so they knew I was going to be selective as to where I would pick up and in essence move Carey, because we knew by the time our youngest, Kaylin, got to be about a freshman or sophomore in high school, we knew we were going to stay in Columbia to get her through high school. Now, all three kids graduated from there. And Kaylin, who at the time was very enthralled in dance in Columbia, knowing she had a future in dance, we weren't going to disrupt that, opportunity she had there. And then so really didn't start even considering. I'd gotten some calls, would I want to apply for other AD jobs? And the answer was no, because I wasn't ready to move. But when the timing just all worked out. So when I got word back in probably October or November of 2016, I think it was, we gave it a hard look and realized that this is a pretty special place with a lot of great opportunity. And then certainly a big thing for me was researching who you would be working for. In terms of a president. And it didn't take me long to find out that E. Joseph Savoy, was a rock star in terms of university presidents and somebody who understood athletics, very supportive of, had a vision, wasn't a micromanager, but again, very, very supportive and knowledgeable. So a lot of things added up to make us say, this place is something we ought to give it a hard look.
Looking at your family life and Carey and yourself, was it hard leaving Mizzou?
Yes and no, but more no, only because I had hit a ceiling there. I really did.
Missouri, you were everything but
Missouri, right? Yeah. Missouri gave me such great opportunities. I'm so thankful for that. But when the athletic director who I'd worked with for 17 years stepped down, he retired. It's just, we actually went through two transitions. A gentleman named Mac Rhodes, who's now the AD at Baylor, replaced the previous AD. And Mac only lasted about 18 months, and then the Baylor opportunity came, for him. And he felt that he came from the state of Texas, and he and his wife felt that was good for them, and I totally understand. Worked very well with Mac, enjoyed that, but it was transition. It was just hard, that was all of our first transition. For 17 years, you had stability and an athletic director, but enjoyed that experience with Mac greatly. And then when Mac left, you go through a second transition, right? And by then it was just kind of, what, we can do this, but it might be time, to really start giving consideration. So the reason it wasn't too hard is because I was truly ready. I was truly ready to make the step. It exhausted my opportunities at Missouri, which I'm very grateful for.
Internally, though, this position, if accepted, you are the guy. There's no other quarterback in the way. That's right. You are the starting QB. What's going through your mind?
There's people try to prepare you, because I have a lot of friends who made that transition from the number two to the actual chair, right? Whether that's Whit Babcock, who's currently at Virginia Tech, Ross Bjork, who's at Mississippi Ole Miss, Doug Gillen, who made the move to Appalachian State before I came here, and many others. Shan Zinger, the former AD at the University of Kansas. I talked to a lot of people, who made that move. And what I learned is that no matter how much people try to prepare you for the difference from moving from this chair to this chair, you never know how hot the fire is until you hit that blue part, right? And so you do as much as you can to prepare and try to get ready, but until you sit in the chair, you never will fully understand.
February 1st, 2017, day one for Bryan Maggard. Right. You're looking at your staff. Everybody's being so sweet, so nice and kind to you. It was a good feeling, right?
It was, but you could tell they were nervous. You could tell. And the one thing I wanted to do, and I remember at a full staff, my first full staff meeting, actually it was, I got to meet with the full staff prior to the announcement, right? The media announcement or the press conference. And I remember the one thing I told everybody is just I want everybody to relax and take a breath, right? I'm going to come in here and I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn for a while. Right. So if there are any concerns that I'm going to come in, with, cutting and slicing and dicing, I'm not. And I wanted to make that clear to the staff because I had just gone through a transition, so I was sitting where they were, right? And you're just wondering, is this new? And the closer you get to the chair, the more susceptible you are to losing your job, right? And I was close to the chair. And although that message was never given to us, Mac Rhodes, who I'd mentioned, he was great. He took that same approach, but it just really wasn't articulated. So you're kind of wondering a little bit, Okay. So I want to just make it very clear to people, to relax, and continue to do your job and do it well, and give me an opportunity to get my feet on the ground. But know that for the first 90 to 120 days, I'm going to do a lot of listening and a lot of learning.
You get in that seat, and then the eyes start coming in, and it's all on you. Releases of your salary, perks, all that stuff is released. That make you uncomfortable?
Not really. That's just part of the job. You gotta go into it knowing that in essence you're a public figure, right? And you've got to be mindful that everything you do, can and will be scrutinized or publicized, praised or not praised. And so that kind of stuff doesn't bother me because, again, I know it's public information, and it's something to be not to be proud of, right? So, no, that didn't bother me at all.
What made you most nervous taking over the big chair?
Just the unknowns. You try to learn as much about the position, the department as you can, but there's no way that anyone or any group of people can fully inform you of everything, right? You just kind of got to come in and learn as on the fly to some degree. So I don't think I don't remember feeling nervous by any means. But certainly did I ever feel overwhelmed? Absolutely. But the hard but good part of our transition was that I came down here by myself for 6 months. Carrie stayed back in Columbia to allow Caitlin, our youngest, to finish high school. Okay. And I made a few trips back, and they'd make a couple trips down in that time frame. But that allowed me to consume myself with work, and I needed to. Yeah. Not having to worry about, is Carrie adjusting okay? Is she lonely? Is she doing okay? I literally, I was on call 24/7, moving and shaking, getting around Acadiana as much as I could, getting my arms around the department, the tasks at hand, things like that. So it worked out very well, that we had that time apart.
So you're learning, growing your face in the community. Not even a year into your tenure, though, you end up having to release softball coach Michael O'Teef. He's got an 80% win percentage.
Right.
What's going through your mind when a spiral kind of causes a huge stir happens in the community, and you're only a couple months in?
Well, one thing I'd learned coming up the ranks, if you will, is that, as a leader in this role, as an athletics director, two things that you're going to have to do for sure are managing expectations and situations, right? And that incident involved both. Right? You had to manage the situation and I wasn't the only one involved, right? This was an institutional decision, so I wasn't on an island by any means by myself. I was part of a decision-making process. And but then, to your point, you had a highly visible, successful individual who, had a strong following, right? And so you had to manage the situation, but you had to manage their expectations as well. And so, when you're in the mix of that, you're just kind of focusing on the next thing that needs to be done, right? So it wasn't so much there was time to be nervous, be anxious, that type of thing. It's never enjoyable for anyone involved, right? Both parties. It's not a fun thing to have to go through, but it's part of leadership, and you have to do it, and But again, that was a situation where it was an institutional decision. It wasn't one individual.
How'd you find Jerry Glasgow?
Beat the bushes, and I made phone calls.
Pretty short amount of time.
I did.
Yeah.
I knew here at University of Louisiana that was going to be a very important hire, right? Not that it's not everywhere, but here it's going to be more special, just given what surrounded, the dismissal of the previous coach. And so, in essence, I knew from a public standpoint it needed to be a good hire, but more importantly to me, I wanted to find somebody, who was going to come in and have the ability to continue the success that this program has had, right? And this is a top 20 program nationally. I knew it was going to be highly sought after. So we had to find what we thought was the right person, for the job. And to no pun intended, I feel like we hit a home run with Jerry.
Billy Napier, first year head coach. How you feel?
Great. He has validated, all the feelings I had, when I first met him, and when, he and I negotiated the position, for him. He is, I wouldn't say he's outmet my expectations, because leading up, to the hire, to the process of meeting with him and interviewing him, he made it very clear just how he was, who he was, that he was going to do something special here. But that's not just going to be measured on the wins and losses. You know what? When behind the scenes, when you see Coach Napier build a foundation, interact with his student athletes, interact and lead his staff, you have somebody really special, in a head coach there. So, and to me, it's those intangibles that are going to result in the success we have on the field.
Cajun Field, we see and hear, read rumors of renovations and things of that nature. Where are we at on that?
Well, we're close to at least identifying what the Cadillac version is going to look like, or if we wanted to phase it, what the Taurus or the Fusion, or the Fiesta might look like.
It is, right.
And to be real honest with you, we all know this. At the highest levels of our campus, we know we're going to get one shot at this, and you really do. And so, what we're really focusing on now,
so we're getting the dome. Is
we're waiting. We're waiting on really final numbers,
okay, so
we can make an informed decision on what version we want to go with, and then depending on that, coincide that with what will the funding model look like, right? And so we're not too far away from having all the information we need. And then it's going to take a little bit of time, because it's going to be a big decision. It really is. And it's going to involve campus leadership and athletic department leadership and others to help us make the right decision moving forward. But I will just say this, and others believe this too. We're going to get one shot to do this right. And even though it's taken longer than maybe what I anticipated, and certainly what I've conveyed publicly, I'd rather take more time to make the right decisions, as opposed to try to meet a deadline and not do so.
We're looking at recent football games, and attendance, the tailgate area has kind of gotten more and more sparse as the season is going on. Why aren't people coming to the games?
That's a great question. If I had the answer to that, we wouldn't have the problem, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know if it's. I think some of it is people are taking a wait and see approach, right? I think that we are the victims of a national epidemic attendance is down everywhere. Now, it's all relative, right? But like when Nick Saban kind of has to publicly call out his student section, and we're talking different numbers. Don't get me wrong, I get that. But it's all relative, right? And so we know that at the national level, for the most part, attendance numbers are down. Now that, I think, is because of technology. I mean, people can access games through handheld devices, through their televisions. I think disposable income, is at a premium for everybody, meaning that, people have a lot of different ways to choose to spend their disposable income. And quite frankly, if you can watch a game, from the comfort of your own home at a much less price, then you might choose to do that. But I think here our specific situation is a little bit. We had 3 losing seasons, right? We had a previous coach who I think just to some degree lost the fan base, and people here, not a lot different than a lot of places, are kind of taking a wait and see approach. But I think what they're starting and will see is that, we've got something very special in Billy Napier and what he's going to do with our football program. So I'm hoping that, that will turn around. We're trying to do everything we can to make the game day experience both enjoyable and engaging, with our fan base. You take a 40,000 seat football stadium, and within that, you've got different populations and demographics of fans, and they all want a little something different from an experience standpoint. The student fan base wants to be, I think, engaged all the time, somehow, some way, right? The demographic that might be the 50 plus, right? They want to sit, watch the game. Some of them might even have the radio set, on while they're watching the game. They don't want to be disturbed. They may not want the music or sound too loud, and they want to focus on the game. And then you've got others who want to come to be a part of that social environment, and they bring the kids, and that's what we want. We want this to be a festival-like feel where people of all ages and family types can come in and really find a niche within the venue to enjoy themselves.
Since your tenure, you brought in a lot of fresh faces and even created some positions to really build the department the way you want it. You excited about the growth? Oh,
extremely excited. I think, but with that growth, we've got to manage it, and I think we're doing a good job of that. It starts with hiring good people. And candidly, I'm talking to one right now. Your hire, what you're bringing to the table is totally new to this athletics department. And whether it's that or, how we're approaching what used to be called sports information, right, is now strategic communications and digital strategy. It's a new world out there, and it's driven by technology. And we know that we got to capitalize on that to touch the masses, to reach people, to promote our brand. But it also, we've got to make sure that we're continuing to provide the support and resources to our sport programs. And that's a key focus of ours, is to do the things that position our sport programs to compete for and win championships. Now, there are a lot of positions, yours as an example, that will, whether you want to call it directly or indirectly, help our sport teams win championships. It really will. There might be other positions or resources that more directly impact that. But that's always going to be our focus, in addition to the number one priority, which is graduating every young man and young woman who completes their eligibility here. Right? That's our goal. And so great opportunity. I feel very good about the direction we're heading in, but I would tell you that, we're going to always have a growth mindset here, because I believe in this industry, if you're not growing, you're dying. And the needle needs to be moving forward all the time. And there may be seasons of life when the needle it moves faster than others. But, as we strive to do that, it takes resources. and that's that. I think that movement process is new here. That movement mindset, but I also think, the things that we're going to have to do to be able to grow, is new. It could be something as simple as charging for general admission parking. We're doing that now. And although we're trying to make it extremely inexpensive, to do that, that's change. And change is hard for people. And so, for example, we talk about football attendance. I think there's probably a segment of the population out there that are saying, you know what, the team really hasn't proven itself yet. I'm more of a fringe fan than I am, the true diehard fan right now. They're asking for more of my resources right now. I'm just going to kind of hold off and wait and see. I get it. That happens. But what we can't do is wait to invest in our programs, right, and hope they do well. To me, I want to invest on the programs on the front end, and we're doing that through whether it's adding, a nutrition program, to our athletic department, whether it's beefing up our broadcast operations or even creating a broadcast operations team, enhancing our communications area, marketing, student services. We're adding positions left and right? But we're doing that so we can absolutely support and drive growth, within our department.
What would you grade yourself so far?
Oh, boy. I'd be hard on myself. Maybe a C+, only because we haven't met some expectations that I would hope we had by now, and that's on me. Ultimately it's on me. I think we've done a little bit above average, but I'm by no means patting myself on the back yet, right? We still need to balance what this university has done so well in to date and helping us with some resources to get us off the ground. But now we've got to make up some ground from a resource standpoint and just capitalize on all the opportunities, right? So again, whether that's implementing a new charge for this or a new charge for that, always wanting to be mindful, though, that we've got to make sure that we provide affordable experiences, for all segments of people.
You can snap your fingers and change something today. What would that be?
Well, again, just more support from the fan base, ultimately. And it's, that has nothing to do with the revenue side, although that would impact revenue. It has most to do with a better experience for our coaches and student athletes. I want it to where when that football team runs out of the tunnel, that they run out in front of 30 to 40,000 people.
It takes community to make that happen. How similar is the community in Lafayette to maybe Dexter?
The neat thing about Lafayette is that there's a distinct, true culture here. And it's that Cajun culture. It's real, and I always describe it in two words: genuine and relational. Right? I think it's a community that does enjoy coming together and having a good time, and whether that good time centers around music, food, beverage, sport, they enjoy coming together. And that's what we're just trying to promote our sporting events as, is that another opportunity to come together. And I get it. We have to make it affordable. We have to make it, doable for people, while balancing that growth mindset, right? So again, I go back to a new fee, in essence, implemented was charging for general admission parking. That's right across the street from donor parking, right? Well, just about anywhere in America, I'm telling you, that's going to be a decent price per game, and we felt like $10 per game was quite reasonable.
But I'm a long-term resident, and I say, I've been going to these games forever. I'm not paying an extra $10. You say to that what?
I say, help us grow. Understand that we're trying to get from here to there. I know I wasn't hired to help keep the status quo, right? And by status quo, I mean where we are today. First of all, we want and need to be the best we can be right now. There was a lot of talk when I was hired about, positioning our department, UL, to move up conference, right? Whether that's the American Athletic Conference or higher, right? And it didn't take me very long to realize we just need to focus on being the best we can be where we live today, and that's a Sun Belt Conference. And it's a competitive athletic conference. It really is. Yeah. And we're not the best there. We don't own that yet. And so let's do that. And what will it take to do that? Right. Well, it takes resources to allow our coaches to recruit better athletes. And those resources may come in sport budgets. It comes through being able to provide the full cost of attendance scholarships to our student athletes. It comes through facilities. It comes through enhancing salary pools for coaches so they can surround themselves with high-quality coaches. It just takes a lot of things, right? It takes funding to. I'm a firm believer in how we fuel our student athletes. We hired 3 full-time nutritionists to work with all 16 sport teams, and on top of that, we allocated $1.5 million of new monies to fuel our kids properly. And so those are the types of things that, I would tell that longtime citizen, that longtime supporter, which we don't negate at all, is that we are looking to have a growth mindset, and we're looking to improve what we are doing. We've got to get to there, and we won't get to there if we continue to do things the same way.
This time next year, what gets done under Athletic Director Bryan Maggard?
Well, I'm hopeful that we have some solidification to a plan to renovate Cajun Field.
Or Cajun Dome. We're not ruling that out.
Yeah, we're ruling that out.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we're not. We already have a Cajun Dome. Let's not let a couple weeks of cold weather. But to your point, those September games, playing in air conditioning wouldn't be too bad, would it?
Come on.
I'd like to have some solidification toward a plan for building a new baseball clubhouse there at Russo Park. That's a much needed facility, for our baseball program. And so a lot of things kind of involving around capital projects and facilities, right? But also really want to get our budget, straight and in order, balanced out. Again, we've gotten great support from campus since I've been here, but it's time we need to do some balancing out, of what they've done for us and how we can do better, even, to be a little bit more self-sustaining. We know this. We cannot continue to depend on the traditional revenue streams of ticket sales, multimedia rights, fundraising, concessions.
Those times have changed.
Right.
Yeah. Well.
If that's what we're going to rely on, we won't grow, right? So to your question, Kevin, one thing also a year from now, I also want us to be moving the needle forward on how can we monetize all of that real estate that we have around Cajun Field. And that's going to be through mixed-use development. That's, to me, that is our Power 5 television money revenue right there.
Your kids been down yet?
They have. They love Lafayette. Our daughter, who's at Missouri right now, she'll drive down Friday. She'll get here Friday evening. She and I'll go out to dinner. Looking forward to that. And then our son, who's in Nashville, he'll be down Monday or Tuesday of next week for the holiday. And then Kaylin, who's up in New York, will get in on Wednesday. But they love it. They love coming down here. They love the culture. They love the food. And then usually it all centers around sporting events, which they enjoy too.
Did they follow your trend, or any of them working in athletics at this time?
No, wisely not. I think at one time my son thought he wanted to do that, but that's when he had this premonition that it all centered around getting bowl gear and
my man,
Nike or Adidas apparel, shoes, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, son, that's such a small part of it.
Strong play though. Get some free clothes.
But he's musically inclined, and he received his degree from the Berklee College of Music out in Boston. So he's now in Nashville pursuing opportunities to break into the music business industry. He doesn't want to perform, but
okay.
And then we have a senior in college at Mizzou, and I think she'll go down the health professions route. Not quite sure yet. And then we have a dancer up in New York at Juilliard. So
you and Carrie did very well.
Well, Carrie did very well. And I always tell them I want to meet their biological father because they got that talent from somewhere.
A little while back, the staff received an email.
Yes.
Speaking on a personal matter, being that your wife, Carrie, diagnosed with breast cancer.
That's right.
How is she?
Doing well. She's actually up in New York as we speak. She had that trip planned She left yesterday. She comes back Saturday to be here for the game. And the doctor said, certainly if you feel up to it, by all means, you can travel. But she's doing well. The C word's a hard word to hear, right? And this, this was like, boom, not going in kind of for what you thought was maybe a semi-routine ultrasound. And then being told, the next day, you have cancer. And so...
Were you there with her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so we got the call. And we'd kind of been, told that it doesn't look real good, but, until a biopsy's read and they know what it is, we don't know for sure. So I think we were trying to prepare ourselves, for the negative news, but until you hear it, it's just not quite the same. I've gone through a series of steps then. Most recently, we got some very positive news yesterday that after the tumor was removed and a lymph node was removed, that everything's clear. So there's nothing in the lymph node. The margins around the tumor were all clear, right? So that's the next best thing that can happen in this process. And so next week we'll meet with an oncologist, and they do one more test. And in essence, it's a risk-reward test, based on factors associated with the tumor itself, her age, where she's at biologically, all that kind of stuff, right? And in essence will tell us whether or not chemo would be a benefit or not. And if it's not, for sure we know she's going to be looking at some radiation and hormone therapy. And not to minimize that at all, but certainly we would take that route over, 4 to 6 months of chemo. So very blessed that it was caught early, staged very early, and we're hoping that because of that we'll have a less invasive treatment plan.
How's Carrie been since the news dropped?
Emotional, very hard, and so a lot of people don't know this, but I'm 17 years out of a diagnosis myself. When I was 34, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer and had to go through chemo, 9 weeks of chemo. Our kids were 7, 5, and 3, I believe. And so it's like it peeled off, a scab for us, right? And reopened a wound that we'd kind of gotten past, and you kind of forget 17 years. But at the same time, we also knew that, that it's a process, it's a journey, right? And the hardest part, at least for us, about hearing, you have cancer is the waiting, from step to step to step, because all you can do is the next right thing and hope and pray that the news you get is positive. But regardless of us going through that, 17 years ago, she's been understandably emotional, but at the same time strong. She's doing as well as expected. That's why I was glad she went to New York to get occupied and stay busy, keep her mind going. Because it's hardest when you're sitting, particularly when you're home alone during the day. I'm at work, and the mind starts playing the what-if games. And so, but no, she's doing well now. And when she landed in New York yesterday, she was anticipating that I would have heard about her pathology report. And so she was extremely nervous, to call me. But fortunately, I was able to give her some really good news. So I know she's enjoying her time with Kaylin now, and we'll follow up next week to see what the next test results show.
You've been through it. You have your alone moments as well. Mm-hmm. How are you?
I'm good. It's but you do go. It's a together type thing, right? You don't go through that alone, particularly when you're married. And I look back. Carrie was really burdened with taking care of somebody who was sick and 3 young kids. Now we had great friends who were certainly supportive, but it's just not the same. When all pistons or all cylinders are moving as they should be. The job is a great distraction for me. It really is. But it's another thing, you have to compartmentalize and deal with, but it's certainly the most important thing. But no, we're good, and again, just very blessed that if you have to go through this, that it was caught early, and all the news we've gotten to date is positive.
Awesome. And certainly best wishes to you and the family.
Thank
and
you
her
much.
health as well. Let's try to end this thing on a positive note.
Okay, let's do it.
You're a big football guy.
I am.
College football guy. You got one drive to win the game. Okay. 90 seconds on the clock. Mm-hmm. You taking Corby Jones or Michael Bishop?
Well, I'd have to, if he ever listen, if he happens to hear this, I'd have to say Corby Jones. Certainly it's as much about their supporting cast. I remember that game. I vividly remember when K-State came to Missouri, and those were the two quarterbacks. And I think we lost by a touchdown or even less. Both had their strengths. Michael had the arm and the legs, and Corby had the legs. Gosh, who would I take? You know what? Just because I know him better, and not just as an athlete,
as a cop out.
I'm going because I know. I think what he's made of. I'm going to take Corby. I really am. Even though
in the fourth quarter you can count on him.
Absolutely, but Michael obviously proved, that he's accountable too, because they were the ones who ended up winning that game, and it was won down to the wire. I mean, it was a great game, two competitive guys, and it was really fun to watch.
Ragin Cajuns athletic director, Dr. Bryan Maggard. Thank you for the time, brother.
Thank you for having me.